When a game on the console or PC finds great financial success, it seems only natural to bring it to handheld devices, be it an app or a phone or a port to a mobile system like the Nintendo DS. But some of these handheld ports were so disastrous and terrible that you have to wonder why they even bothered. And look, we get it, it can be super difficult to condense a large console game for the handheld device, but shouldn't that be an indication to not do it rather than do it half-assed? Welcome everybody to Trending10, Nemo here, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 worst handheld video game ports of all time. Number 10, we have Splinter Cell Chaos Theory for the Nintendo DS. One of the best stealth games ever made, Chaos Theory was released in 2005 after a few delays in development. The console and the PC versions of the game were met with praise mainly towards the improved engine, gameplay, and graphics. There's also a mobile version of the game that shifted things to a 2D side-scroller, and it was surprisingly a lot of fun. However, the one version of the game that got left behind in the critical praise was that for the Nintendo DS, which attempted to be a full-on recreation of the core game, which is a trend you're going to see a lot in this video. The DS version of Chaos Theory was a disaster and pretty much destroyed all of the areas of praise that the console version got. The graphics were terrible and muddy, making it hard to even make out what was happening on screen during stealth sections. The controls were extremely complicated, and the clunkiness of the D-pad on the DS made effective stealth strategies impossible. Number 9, we have LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy for the Nintendo DS. The first LEGO Star Wars game was a huge hit, recreating the prequel trilogy in LEGO fashion with a fun gameplay and plenty of great added humor. The sequels seek to add the same level of lovable fun to the original Star Wars trilogy, and it definitely did that, as the console versions of LEGO Star Wars 2 are pretty fantastic. The DS version, on the other hand, is absolutely awful. While many handheld ports of console games opt to change the gameplay in order to make it easier for the system to handle, LEGO Star Wars 2 attempted to be a full, complete port on the DS cartridge, and it failed miserably. More bugs than you could ever try to count, and constant freezing forcing you to start over and lose all of your progression. I can appreciate the effort on this one, but it just completely falls flat. Number 8, we have Jak Daxter Collection for PlayStation Vita. The Jak Daxter games are freaking awesome and some of the best PS exclusives ever made. Naturally, with the sudden popularity surge of remasters and remakes into recent years, Sony wanted to bring Jak Daxter back into the spotlight with a collection that would include ports of the first 3 games in the series that came with updated graphics. The PS3 version of this collection was pretty good, but the PS Vita version was just completely awful. The frame rate was terrible, making the platforming a complete chore, and the bad controls only made everything way harder than it needed to be. Plus, the graphics were actually dumbed down on the Vita version, making it look inferior to the original PS2 version, which definitely didn't make players happy. When you buy a remastered version of a game, you're probably expecting it to look better than the original, not worse. Number 7, we have Medal of Honor Underground for the Game Boy Advance. Medal of Honor used to be the head honcho of military FPS games, and Underground was one of the standouts of that series. Released in 2000 for the PS1, Medal of Honor Underground was a hit with fans and critics with its fun gameplay, great female protagonists, and more. It seemed only natural that the game be ported in order to keep the legend going, but taking a very advanced FPS and shoving it onto a Game Boy Advance cartridge was an awful idea. The Game Boy Advance version of Underground looked like a bad Doom knockoff, and even that would be insulting to Doom. The graphics were completely awful, the sound effects didn't sync up with many of the gunshots, and it had the frame rate of a paper towel. I can appreciate the effort that went into condensing a game this large into an inferior hardware, but perhaps this one should have just gotten shut down during the development process. Number 6, we have Hyrule Warriors Legends for the Nintendo 3DS. Hyrule Warriors was a hack and slash set in the Zelda universe that came out for the Wii U in 2014. It was a big hit with Nintendo fans and became one of the best-selling games on the console. After the success of the original version, Nintendo announced that the 3DS would be getting a full port of the game with some new features, and it would be called Hyrule Warriors Legends. However, things fell apart quickly once the game actually launched. The frame rate was awful and constantly dropped below 20 FPS, not to mention that while this version did technically have more features than the console version, the features were much less substantial than the originals, such as a simpler combos, less enemies on screen, and a multitude of technical issues. Things only got more frustrating when it was revealed that all of these problems were present on the original versions of the 3DS and that the new 3DS that ran the game with no issues, which led to tons of fans getting angry at Nintendo, as at no point during the game's build-up it was ever stated that the original 3DS couldn't handle it. Number 5, we have Myst for the Nintendo DS. Myst is an adventure puzzle game released for the PC in 1993. The game was loved by critics due to its immersion factor and its challenging puzzles, and it was the best-selling PC game ever until The Sims dethroned it in 2002. When the Nintendo DS hit the market and was a smash hit, Myst was ordered to get a port, which seemed like an easy task given the 14-year gap between the two versions, giving plenty of time for the developers to find a good way to condense the files. The DS version of Myst featured remastered audio and visuals, but that wasn't enough to distract players from the absolutely broken gameplay. I'm no game developer, but what was so tough about porting a very simple 14-year-old game to the DS, which was pretty powerful for a handheld system at the time? Number 4, we have Myst for the Nintendo 3DS. I know we just talked about Myst, but there was actually a second port of this game, and it was even worse than the first one. After the disaster that was the DS port of Myst, you would think that the developers would learn their lesson and fix the bugs for the 3DS version, right? Well, you're wrong. The 3DS version of Myst was literally an untouched copy of the DS port, complete with all of the game-breaking bugs, all of which were put on even more focused display due to the superior hardware of the 3DS over the original DS. Number 3, we have Street Fighter 2 for Game Boy. Street Fighter 2 is one of the best fighting games ever made, and it pretty much single-handedly saved the genre altogether. It seemed only natural that Capcom keep things going with a port for the original Game Boy in 1995. Unfortunately, porting a game as fast and technical as Street Fighter 2 to such an inferior system didn't go to plan. This version contained only 9 of the original 12 characters because of lack of additional buttons on the arcade version. The different moves were separated by how long the player held down one of the 2 buttons, making combat extremely tedious and slow. Plus, since the Game Boy was all black and white, certain characters are impossible to tell apart, and if you're having a ditto match where both players are the same character, good luck figuring out who you are. Of all of the different versions of Street Fighter 2, the Game Boy port is easily the worst of them all. Number 2, we have Bioshock for iOS. Mobile phones are getting more and more powerful by the year, and mobile games are taking full advantage of this. Heck, most smartphones can even run full emulators of previous consoles, boasting the power they hold. 2K Games wanted to break into the mobile market with a full port of their hit game Bioshock in 2014. The iOS port of Bioshock was a complete equivalent of the Xbox 360 version, but was removed from the App Store just a year after release due to how awful the reception and the game being completely broken with the newer iOS software. After a while of promising that they would fix the game, 2K gave up and subtly announced that they would not be updating the game anymore, officially killing it and making everyone who bought it wish they would have gotten a refund. Now, last but not least, at the number 1 spot, we have Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis for the Game Boy Advance. Taking our number 1 spot is the piece of trash that was supposed to be a port of the original Sonic game. Now, if you guys don't know what the original Sonic game is, it is one of the greatest games of all time, and it seemed only natural that Sega would want to port the game to handheld devices. After all, the game was very old at the time, as the original one came out in 1991 and the Game Boy Advance version was due out in 2006. Unfortunately, just about everything that could have gone wrong indeed did go wrong. The port was horribly put together with awful sound and frame rate issues, as well as an awkward change in the game's camera, putting Sonic much closer than in the original, which made it much more difficult to see what was actually happening. The developers spoke out after the backlash and tried to say that it was because of the hardware of the Game Boy Advance, which made porting the original game impossible. However, not only was this not true, but it also just made Sega look even worse. If this wasn't possible to do in the first place, why did you go ahead and do it anyways? I guess we will never know, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn your post notifications on. And also check out our sponsors in the description. Thank you guys all for watching this video. And until next time, this has been Nemo from Trending10, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.